Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. The Matchroom chairman Barry Hearn is back at it again with what will be seen as some very controversial comments by some, saying that Deontay Wilder is the easiest of 4 potential fights for Anthony Joshua, easier than Dillian Whyte, Tyson Fury and Jarrell Miller. He also says that Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder in general don't really represent a lot of risk for Anthony Joshua. So we'll get to his comments and then a few thoughts, because certainly a bit to unpack here. Buckle in. Let's go. So talking to lovesportradio.com, see on screen here, Barry Hearn says, in terms of a Tyson Fury fight, it's a big fight. It's complicated because Tyson Fury's on BT. Tyson Fury's promoted by Frank Warren. We are obviously the market leaders and industry leaders, so there's all sorts of egos and money coming in. I'd be very happy to fight Tyson Fury on April 13th as well. And the reason being, Tyson Fury can box, but he can't punch. Deontay Wilder can punch, but he can't box. AJ can punch and he can box. So if I'm looking at protecting my man, making sure he earns the most amount of money with the least amount of risk, I'd take either of these 2 fights in a heartbeat. But being the cynical old git that I am, I don't think that they're going to be knocking our door down, because I think they work it out. Look, we can fight each other, we both think we're going to win, and either of them could win, and then we can fight Joshua for even more money. So you tend to put it off. It's like Amir Khan and Kell Brook. They always think they can go back to that fight later after they've milked the system. And actually life doesn't work like that. Sometimes you miss a bus because it's pulled away from the curb. So Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury is a great fight. I believe that will probably happen one way or the other. If in the meantime either of them phones up Eddie, we would sign either of them in a heartbeat. We're running a business. Joshua is the world champion, undisputed number 1. He's the only real champion out there. Unblemished records, holds 4 belts, so no problem. But we run a business, so who's next? If those 2 are not coming to the party quickly, I would imagine that Eddie is looking at Jarrell Miller in New York. A Madison Square Garden debut for AJ would be commercially very solid. And then Dillian Whyte, who I think is pound for pound the most dangerous heavyweight out there. If I was ranking them in danger, I would say Deontay Wilder is the easiest fight. I think Jarrell Miller is an unknown fight because we don't know how good he is. He's a big lump. I think Tyson Fury is a tricky fight, but when you've hit him, he does tend to fall over, although to his credit, he gets up again, which is remarkable, and I've got the greatest respect for him for what he's done. Pulled himself together from the brink. Brilliant story. The most dangerous is Dillian Whyte. Barry Hearn statements to lovesportradio.com. Certainly a bit to get through from there, and certainly saying that Dillian Whyte is the most dangerous of the 4. Well, that could well be seen as a prelude to Anthony Joshua is going to be fighting Dillian Whyte in April. And I guess when you consider that, it's not a bad fight, but it's certainly not Tyson Fury and it's certainly not Deontay Wilder. But you can't take away from Dillian Whyte that he's done a huge amount in terms of who he's been facing to get himself into a position where he is one of a few guys that deserves a title shot. He's done about as much as anyone can to get a title shot, and he wants that title shot. But at the end of the day, that could also come down to money. When Dillian Whyte was on Soccer AM recently, he revealed that they've been trying behind the scenes to make a fight with Anthony Joshua for some time now. And you can understand that, those sorts of discussions and negotiations would have been going on for some time. Obviously, Eddie Hearn is the promoter of both Joshua and Whyte. But, they're still different entities within the same thing. So Whyte, he's obviously, and his management are after the best deal that they can get. They're not just going to roll over and take, 15% or 20%. After all, it's a voluntary challenge. And it's more likely that Anthony Joshua is going to try give some sort of flat fee to Dillian Whyte as opposed to a percentage deal that, others are seeking, such as Deontay Wilder. And there has been a percentage deal to Wilder that's been offered, but we don't know what. Apparently he's not answering the phone, or his team isn't really engaging with Anthony Joshua and his representatives right now. But it certainly does feel that Barry Hearn is softening the public up in general to the prospect of Dillian Whyte, saying he's the most dangerous out of the 4 opponents. And if you examine that, some people will certainly take on in terms of a power risk with the left hook, that there is something there that, you could read into and go, he's just knocked out Derek Chisora, he knocked down Joseph Parker, sparked out Lucas Brown. There is a case to say that Dillian Whyte is certainly a dangerous fighter. But more dangerous than Deontay Wilder and his one-punch power? It's hard to say. I mean, Anthony Joshua has shown that he can be hurt, and he's been down before against Vladimir Klitschko. So, all of these fights, I don't think they're sort of gimme fights for Anthony Joshua. But, if you were to look at it in terms of Tyson Fury, they're talking about, he can't punch, but he can box. That could actually be quite an awkward style matchup for Anthony Joshua. I think we have to look at these in terms of the different styles. Deontay Wilder might be a bit of a one-trick pony, but he's got power. That's a pretty good trick, and it almost got him out of jail. Well, it did to a certain degree against Tyson Fury. He thought he'd won that with a knockout. Fury, rose from the dead to beat the count. And actually, funny story, when I was doing it, if you haven't checked it out yet, my new series, Prospect series, The Rise of, first episode on F.A. Ajagba, I was doing some research for that, and Jack Reese, who's been criticised for giving Tyson Fury what some deem a long count, but also when he was up, he told him to walk over to his left so, he could assess him. In that video, F.A. Ajagba's first fight against Jarrell Miller, go have a look at that. That is on the internet. He does the same thing there, so it's not a one-off thing that Jack Reese did. That is something that he does as a referee. He gives them the opportunity to prove that they're still fit to fight. But I digress. But this stuff from Barry Hearn about the easiest fight, who is the easiest, that Deontay Wilder is the easiest of the four. Big call. I don't necessarily agree with that. I actually think they all represent different levels of risk, but just to sort of say Dillian Whyte is the most dangerous, well, it's in his interest to say that. Some will agree with that. Tyson Fury, in terms of a boxing sense, that might be the most dangerous fight for Anthony Joshua, because there is the potential for Tyson Fury to do what he did to Vladimir Klitschko. Take Anthony Joshua's right hand away, get him doubting himself, use his skill and technique, make him miss, make him gas out a bit. And we saw Deontay Wilder gassing in the Fury fight later on. And that was because he was throwing a lot of shots and finding fresh air. Hugely exhausting. So Fury, in terms of a boxing sense, he represents a lot of risk. Deontay Wilder, he's got that power. He proved against Tyson Fury he can catch up with you eventually. A lot of people were saying Tyson Fury couldn't be caught. He was caught twice in that fight. Although a lot of people also say Tyson Fury maybe not at 100%. But going back to Dillian Whyte, there's a lot of risk there. There is. He's a big puncher. He has been improving. He wants the title shot. But there is a sense of, we've been there, done that, got the postcard. And potentially, I would rather see a Dillian Whyte and Deontay Wilder fight just for the interest factor. Certainly Whyte as the number one challenger in the WBC, that would be a very good fight. But Wilder isn't interested in that fight, said he can wait Dillian Whyte out, wants him to go off and face Luis Ortiz. But then again, he may face Dominic Breazeale. The WBC may order an interim fight if Fury and Wilder fight again. But the other guy here, the fourth name mentioned, Jarrell Miller, it's quite interesting because Barry Hearn kind of sums up what a lot of us have been thinking about this guy. We just don't really know how good he is. And I quote, Jarrell Miller is an unknown fight because we don't know how good he is. He's a big lump. And that for me is a massive red flag in itself, that his outfit, Matchroom, through extension Matchroom USA, is promoting this guy. They've had him for a few fights now. They've put him in with Neville Nobodies, a rinsed Thomas Adamek, a lightly regarded prospect in terms of Bogdan Dinu. He got through them well enough, but, no one wanted those fights. And we still don't know how good he is because Miller's level, it was at a decent level. Johan Dorper, Marius Wok, Gerald Washington. But he's tapered off. So the fact that they're talking about potential New York fight against a guy that they don't even know how good he is, I mean, that says a lot. There's a lot of risk there. And, is there any demand for that fight compared to the other fights? We have to say that, there is a lot of people that would like to see Jarrell Miller get knocked out because essentially his profile right now is his mouth. He talks trash. He's not really doing it in the ring against anyone that we'd like to see. So, we can almost, in some ways, because we don't know how good Jarrell Miller is, I think we can discount that possibility of the fight being next. And Anthony Joshua himself has said Jarrell Miller is not next. He said it's Dillian Whyte or Deontay Wilder. And I think Tyson Fury, if that option truly came to the fore, if that was, if you're able to iron out the broadcasting issues and iron out the money, they'd take that fight in a heartbeat too, because it would be so big. It would be a massive fight. But the problem is with egos and money, and Barry Hearn said it himself, there's egos and money involved between Frank Warren and them, Matchroom as what he says is the market leaders. They're not going to get that fight made. It's just, that's just a fact. I just don't see how they're going to be able to iron any of that out. That's why I don't think a Tyson Fury and Joshua fight can be next. A Wilder and Joshua fight, well, it could be next, but there is no real negotiations going on from what Eddie Hearn had said just in the last day or two. And that was also, I believe, from lovesportradio.com. It might have been the same interview. So we have to look at what's really happening in terms of what they're really saying here. There's a reason that he's talking up Dillian Whyte and talking everyone else down, because that probably is the next fight, and they're going to be sort of softening the public up for that. They have to build that fight. But I have to say, in general, is there a lot of buzz for a rematch right now? Kind of feels a little bit similar to the situation with Derek Chisora and Dillian Whyte. Prior to Derek Chisora knocking out Carlos Takam, it was one of those fights that it was there. It was always going to be there. They could have that fight, but, there was no real demand for it. And I kind of feel the same with this Dillian Whyte and Anthony Joshua fight. The sort of heat's gone out of the rivalry in recent years. I mean, and even when they're at the ring apron, Joshua was talking about, negotiations and other bits and pieces. It wasn't really sort of heated sort of stuff, as you may have seen 2, 3, 4 years ago, when obviously their rivalry, I think, was at its peak then. Obviously, White's done a lot to redeem himself after that loss. He's got some good wins of his own, beating Joseph Parker, Lucas Brown, Robert Helenius, and more recently Derek Chisora. But is anyone really thirsting for that? And this is the thing. It comes back to what Barry Hearn was saying. They run a business, so who's next? They have to think about these things if they're going to do 90 or 100,000 at Wembley, because the stadium's booked. They're going ahead with that, and they're not pulling out. It's the only date in 2019. They got to think about who can we fill the stadium, because they don't want to end up going backwards on some of this and making less money, because that ends up being a bit of a blemish, a bit of an embarrassment. They want a full house, or at least near to it. You can look at the Alexander Povetkin fight and go 83,000, that was a success, but the whole sort of narrative of Joshua can fight anyone and fill Wembley, I don't think that is quite true, because Povetkin was no joke, but obviously there was some hindrance there. He was a guy who didn't really help sell the fight. He was the mandatory. He didn't have an obligation to try and make it bigger and bigger. He had his split, which was locked in, regardless of what he did in terms of promotional sense, and he didn't speak English. All those different factors count. This is a voluntary. They want someone who can help sell the fight. That's why names like Wilder, Fury, Whyte, and Miller, all decent trash talkers, guys who can build a fight. That's why they're all options for the fight. But how realistic some of them are, I just don't know. Wilder seems to be, fixated on the Fury rematch, and, good luck to him. That seems a likely option that is going to be made. Fury, he's been a bit of a wild card in the sense that some of his recent comments and comments coming out of his camp have been, well, maybe we don't want the Wilder rematch next. I think he's playing possum there in terms of it's a negotiating tactic. And if you strip those two guys out, it really is just a small list of Dillian Whyte and Jarrell Miller. And Joshua has already signalled it would be Whyte. So for all the smoke and mirrors and the charade and whatnot, we know who's next if it's not Wilder or Fury. And hence, Barry Hearn trying to talk up the risk that Dillian Whyte represents. It is the most likely fight, saying he's the most dangerous of the four. That's a massive call, and a lot of people are I'm sure going to be a bit outraged about that, but there will be some people who go, well, Dillian Whyte, on current form and the strength of the knockout against Chisora, knocking down Joseph Parker, which Joshua couldn't do, and then sparking out Lucas Brown earlier in 2018, well, some people will agree with that. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.